Hey everybody, this is Andy from Laughing in Purgatory. For those of you who read my latest email newsletter, I talked a lot about my getting divorced, its effect on my kids, and a little bit about the process. And I got a email from a person who read the article, and he was very interested in learning more about the mediation process and whether or not it was legal in his state, which is Texas, and whether or not it was the process is a face-to-face duel. And so I thought I would answer it in this video and just talk about mediation, my personal experiences with it, and so here it is. Mediation is a process where you have a third party help you and your spouse, soon-to-be ex-spouse, to come up with a decision or a series of decisions about what's going to happen after the divorce. It's about who gets what property, how the other assets are divided, who takes care of the children, visitation rights, alimony, everything that you can think of, tax burden, who takes care of taxes, health insurance, life insurance, all that. And the thing is about mediators is that they are neutral third parties. They are not supposed to represent you. They're not supposed to represent your spouse. They're supposed to be neutral and just pretty much facilitate the decision-making process. There's a lot of benefits to going through mediation than through divorce court, or through getting divorce lawyers initially and just slugging it out. And one of them is that mediation is cheaper. I believe that I spent probably about a third of what I was going to spend if the whole process went immediately to divorce lawyers and we would just fight it out in court. And this is what you typically hear from people too who went through mediation, is that it is cheaper. It's also faster too, because mediation is that even though there's a lot of conflict, or there can be a lot of conflict within the mediation process, there is still an implied understanding that you're there to work this out together to get to a point that you can at least go your separate ways somewhat civilly. The good thing about mediation too is that it's private. You know, if you're going to go and fight out divorce in the courts, that is all public. Anyone can read about your dirty laundry. The good thing about mediators too is that they can't be pulled into court at a later time to testify for one person or the other. So those are some really good reasons to go through mediation. There are different stages of mediation. When you initially go into the mediator's office, they will basically educate you about, what their professional roles are, about how, they're not your lawyers, how you should have a lawyer. A good mediator will typically start out within the first few minutes of saying you should really have your own lawyer and consult with them. Afterwards, you'll come up with a mediation agreement. An agreement is about who pays the mediation, because that's negotiable too. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It doesn't have to be all one person pays for it either. So that's something that you can discuss right from the get-go. Another thing that we did in mediation, or that our mediators had, is that they gave us a checklist about what were the issues that we were going to be talking about. There were things like, child care, of course, child support, alimony, how we were going to divide up what assets we had. And so I found this to be a useful guide, so that I literally crossed out these topics as we went through them and wrote down little notes too. And that's what I suggest too, is that probably note-taking during the session, just to keep track of what's going on, is a good idea. That's just an aside. I kept a bunch of notes, and it helped. It helped quite a bit for me, just to center myself about where we were in the process. you may need to sign or to make out a transition agreement. A transition agreement is basically like a mini agreement that you and your spouse come up with that dictates about all the major things, about child care bills, whatever, that gets you from right then and there at that moment till the time that you go into court, until the separation agreement is filled out. You may need that, you may not. It all depends on how difficult the process is going to be. Another thing that you're going to have to do when you're doing mediation is that you're going to have a lot of homework. You're going to have to fill out some financial documents. You're going to have to fill out things about where you work, how much money you make, what your bills are. I don't know how common this is, but in Massachusetts you actually have to go to a divorce/parenting class. Of course, if you have kids. And I found this interesting just because you got to see exactly what other people were thinking about divorce. And it was a pretty weird experience for me. It was only 2 classes, 4 hours each class, I believe it was. You get a little certificate at the end. I'll tell you the story about this parenting class that I went to. Both the teachers seemed to be pretty intelligent people, both lawyers, and they were showing us a video to talk about the difficulties that people have while parenting. And this was taken from a movie. I forget which movie it was. It was one of those non-memorable movies that Hollywood churns out. And it was a discussion, an altercation between a husband and his ex-wife, in where the husband actually threatens his ex-wife's now boyfriend. It's like, I'm going to kill him if he lays another hand on my kid. And no one really addressed the fact that the father in the movie clip actually, verbally threatened this other person. And I raised my hand and I thought, hey, I don't know if this is a good idea that this guy threatened this other person, that you don't see, but you can't go around threatening to kill people. There are venues, there are legal ways of dealing with someone laying hands on your kids, but threatening this other person with physical violence, that's the way to get into a restraining order. That's the way how you get into trouble with the law. And you shouldn't, and I think I use the should word, because, as soon as you use the should word when you're trying to make your point, people just close down. You could be talking about the most solid point in the world, but as soon as you use the word should, they're like, hey, he's trying to should me, somewhere in their brain. And of course I got blown off. I got blown off by both of the teachers in the class, basically saying they just didn't want to deal with the problem. Or maybe they're just used to having a bunch of people there in the classroom who were just there just to pass time and to get their certificate. Because if you don't get that certificate in Massachusetts, you are not going to get divorced. It is as simple as that. If you have kids, you're not going to get divorced. I want to address the issue about what the laws are like in Texas. I did a rudimentary Google search about what the laws are in Texas, and even though there are idiosyncratic rules per county, or there can be in Texas, yes, you can still go to a mediator in Texas. And what I found interesting, too, is that there was this particular lawyer who runs this mediation firm, and what he does is that he places one spouse with their lawyer in one room, and the other spouse with their lawyer in another room, and what he does is that he shuttles back and forth, until they eventually hammer out an agreement. Now, this was not the process that I went through. What I went through is that we all met together, myself, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and we had 2 mediators. One was a lawyer and one was a therapist. And over the course of several sessions, we were able to come up with a final separation agreement. The thing is, just because you have a separation agreement doesn't mean you're done. What happens is that when you have the first draft of the separation agreement, what you should be doing is bringing it to your lawyer. Your spouse will be bringing it to their lawyer. They both look at it, and then they say, this is what needs to be changed. Then there'll be typically a second draft. There might even be a third draft. And even when you have the quote-unquote final draft of the separation agreement, that final legal document doesn't mean that you're done. What you do is that you have to bring a packet, which typically has your financial documents, your child care certificate. In case you're in Massachusetts, you bring it down to court, you file it in, they'll give you a court date. You appear in court, and my personal recommendation is that you bring your lawyer when you go into the courtroom, just in case the court will ask you questions. They'll look at the document. The court registrar will ask you questions. The judge will ask you questions too. And if they don't like your answers, you're not going to finish that day. Or there'll be issues. You might have to kick it to another day. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that at all. So I suggest bringing your own lawyer in just so that you have that kind of extra insurance, that you only go into court once with your separation agreement, and then you're out the same day, and you're done. In Massachusetts, however, you're not done. What happens is that even after you go to the court, you file your paperwork, you answer the questions of the judge, you still have to wait 120 days. I guess it's a cooling off period. But after the judge says yes, everything looks good, after your 120 days, then you're done. I'm not sure if there is a waiting period in Texas. I'm going to include some links down below so that this person who asked me the question about Texas, laws regarding mediation, they'll be able to check it out. Like I said, states are very idiosyncratic about how they handle divorce. All right, is that it? I think that's it. I hope that's been useful. I think I've been talking for way too long. And if you have any questions, you can still, put it in the comments below. Thanks a lot. This has been Andy from Laughing in Purgatory. Bye.